Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever part of the world you are tuned in from. This is Funny Like a Clown podcast. I'm your host, Dennis Wirth. We're in September 19th, 2023. This episode number 178. We're going to be discussing controversial comedian Artie Lange. Um, Geez, the highs and lows of this guy's career, and man, it's been a crazy, crazy ride. Just as a fan, you know how crazy of a ride it's been, but when you prepare for a podcast, you realize it's twice as crazy as you even thought. As always, today's episode is brought to you by G Vegas Buffalo Sauce. With a spicy, sweet, savory tasting game time. Put the whamma jamma in your mouth. Go to www.gvegas.webs.com. Get it shipped right to your door, man. You can't go wrong. I don't know if Artie Lang likes a good buffalo sauce, but he likes some other stuff, and it's I got to preface this by saying, comedy, it's a mecca, okay? I mean, I was going through a bitter divorce, and I saw my son was getting caught in the middle of it. It was tearing me apart. There was nothing I could do, and I used comedy as an outlet to deal with the pain I was dealing with. So, I mean, Artie here, he had his ups and downs with substance abuse, and he used, I think, comedy, as an outlet, to make fun of the painful thing in his life, the same as I did. So, getting into that, I got to say, what this guy went through. I don't know. It kind of touched me because my best friend, I saw him, he fought substance abuse, and he went to AA meeting after AA meeting after AA meeting, and finally he took his own life. He couldn't beat it. So, I can almost see where this guy was coming from because I saw it firsthand. So let's get into it here. Comedian, actor, radio personality, best known for Mad TV from 95 to 97, The Howard Stern Show from 2001 to 2009. And everybody thinks, oh, I can't be a star, man, because these stars, they just start out stars. No, no, Artie was a ship loader. He loaded ships at a dock. He did that for a living. He was a taxi driver for a while. Then finally in 1989, he tried comedy. And he finally took it up for full time after 5 years on the New York comedy scene. He's from Jersey. So, I mean, the Jersey/New York comedy scene. That's one of the top in the world. That in LA, those are two hot spots. Let's see. Before he could do the second season of Mad TV, he was arrested for cocaine possession, which led to his dismissal from the show. Let's see. 1997, Norm Macdonald chose Artie to be in his film Dirty Work. That was kind of his big comeback there. Norm cut him a break, which I seen him on. He was on a podcast too. I forget whose podcast, and he said, every time I go to rehab and I get out, you guys are gracious enough to let me come back and let you on your shows. The other stars have him on their shows, and that's what keeps him popular. Where a lot of people would have turned their back. Hey, I don't want to deal with this drug addict. But everybody knows what he's going through, and addiction, that's big in the entertainment industry. So I'm sure a lot of comics do know what he's going through. And again, Norm had him on his TV show, The Norm Show, in 2001. Let's see. He returned to Jersey to join the Howard Stern Show, which I guess I best know him from. He released 2 comedy albums during that time. He was on the Howard Stern Show. Made his own movie, Artie Lang Beer League, in 2006. Released in 2008 a book, Too Fat to Fish. If you're too fat to fish, it's pretty fat, though. I recently saw a video of a guy who was talking about losing weight, and he said he was too fat to sit on his computer for 8 hours a day doing. He was at his own home doing a job on the computer, and he was just too big just to sit in front of his computer for 8 hours. It was just too tiring for him. And I battle weight loss problems myself, so I definitely know where these guys are coming from. But hey, the book was on the New York bestseller list at number uno. That's number one, baby. That's right. So a lot of people are paying attention to Artie. I mean, he's definitely a known, a known figure from his time on Mad TV and the Howard Stern Show. 2010, he attempted suicide. Went to rehab for it. Later, he hosted the Nick and Artie Show with Nick DiPaolo from 2011, 2013. Then he did his own show, The Artie Lang Show, until 2014. He released a second book, Crash and Burn, in 2013. 2015 to 17, he did the Artie Quitter podcast, which I believe was like a paid podcast. It was, his fans had to pay to listen to it. It wasn't something you listened to for free. You had to join in. Let's see. He had a reoccurring role on HBO's series Crashing, which I think he was saying he was making like 17,000 an episode or something like that. Let's see. He was co-host of the Artie and Anthony show with Anthony Kuma till 2018. Released a third book. Want to bet? Because he had a gambling addiction too. That was one of his funny bits. And he's like, if you don't have nobody can understand why you have a gambling addiction. And it's like, I say, food's a drug like anything else. Nobody understands. Well, when I have enough to eat, I just stop. It's like, well, you're not addicted. It's like, well, when I don't do drugs, but I could just stop. I'm a mule because you're addicted. But he was addicted to gambling. And one of his bits, he said, well, he asked his friend, how much you got in the bank? He's like, I don't know, $1,000. All right. He's like, all right, you bet $3,000 on this game and watch how exciting it becomes for you then. Okay. He's like, it'll be the most exciting game you've ever seen in your damn life. Then he's like, well, I don't know nothing about that game. He's like, that's when it's the best, when you don't know a damn thing about either team. Okay. It becomes that exciting because your whole life's riding on it. So that was his explaining addiction to gambling. I thought it was I thought it was a funny take on it anyway. Let's see. After a series of arrests for drugs again, he entered rehab again and put his career on hold because he was trying to clean himself up. Once he got released, he started the Halfway House podcast in 2019. He was hired to do that one. He paused his career twice again, then resumed in 2021. As we said, born in New Jersey, he's a Jersey guy down there with Bon Jovi, living on a prayer. I guess his father was arrested once for keeping $200,000 in counterfeit money that he got from a loan shark. So, and I can say my father was a nut. If I had followed the example that he said, I'd probably be in a prison cell somewhere right now. So, yes, your parents setting an example does shape who you turn into later on in life. And thank God I had my mother to keep me straight. So I always felt bad for her. So I always swore I'd never be like my dad. I'd actually make something of myself. Let's see. His father was spared jail time because of his young son Artie at the time. I think he got probation or whatever he got, whatever the deal was. But let's see. Played baseball in high school and actually pretty good. He was all county third baseman. But he got poor grades. I remember one of his jokes was he failed gym. It's like, who fails gym? It's like the easiest class. So you just show up and do something. If you changed into your gym uniform, you could pass gym. So he failed gym. He had to go to summer school for gym. I remember him saying. But he had to go to summer school to graduate. Yeah, and in 1985, he was arrested for a bank robbery, which he claimed it was just a joke. He was trying to impress his girlfriend. I guess he wrote on a piece of paper, "Give me all the money in the register," and handed it to the teller as a joke. And then when he seen she was starting to take it serious, he's like, "No, no, no, it's a joke." And he took the paper and threw it in the trash. But she wasn't taking it as no joke. She had hit the panic alarm already. So police came in and he got arrested for that. I guess he got it all knocked down to disorderly conduct and got probation for a period of time. And but part of his probation, which was probably this turned into a good thing, he had to attend the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Okay, so this is how he got into show business. Was trying to rob a bank of probation. And I remember he said he went over his girlfriend's house and his father sat him down. And I guess her father was a gangster, so he understood. He's like, next time you try to rob bank, take my daughter with you. You understand me? Take my daughter, you rob bank. Okay. It was like, it was okay, you rob the bank, just don't take my daughter with you when you do it, okay? So I kind of cracked up at that one too. Let's see, after attending the Connecticut School of Broadcasting, he was accepted in Seton Hall University. I guess his uncle worked there in the admissions office and kind of helped him slide in there. but he got an A for telling stories in front of the class. I guess he was a really good storyteller, which a lot of people told me that too when I was young. Whenever I told the story, I always told it in a funny way, which kind of led, I guess, again, shows you made out for comedy, telling funny stories in funny ways. So that helped him with public speaking too, which I had never had public speaking. I mean, I told funny stories. It was like friends and family. I had never spoken in front of when I did comedy in front of a crowd, and that's one of your fears you got to get over right there is talking in front of a crowd. Um, so that was his first time, he said, speaking in front of a group of people was when he did that, and he got an A, so I guess he was pretty good at it. But he became bored with college, I guess, as most people do, and he thought of ways to quit. Let's see. His father installed antennas for a living, and I guess he fell one day trying to install an antenna, and fell and became a quadriplegic. So that was his excuse to leave college. Hey, I got to get a job and support my family now because dad can't work anymore. So he got a job to help his mom. Said his influences were Richard Pryor, Richard Lewis, and George Carlin, which this guy right here, Sam Kinison, he was my influence. But everybody has those. Yeah, I mean Pryor and Carlin that are voted the number 1 and 2 comics of all time. So who can't say those two comics touched their career in some way because they were such popular comedians. They had such the long careers, where because of substance abuse like Artie, a lot of comics careers they're cut short. So you don't get the longevity that the Pryor and Carlin had in the business. And just to stay on top in the business, there's a lot of one hit wonders out there in comedy. I mean, to maintain it that long and stay on top that long, there's not many comics that can pull it off. Made his comedy debut at the Improv in New York City, and he said he bombed bad, which most comics do. I'll tell you, it's when you go up there, you think it's gonna click like that, and there's a step you got to get over it before you start getting laughs. I mean, you got no material whatsoever. You don't know if they're gonna laugh at it or not. Like once you get your first 5 minutes worked out, you always got that to fall back on. But before you get your first 5 minutes, boy, you got nothing. Okay. So it's very easy to bomb. And I've seen a lot of comics, and they go up and they bomb. Oh, I can't do this. And they quit. It's like, no, everybody bombs. You got to get over that. Okay. There's very few comics going out their first time and, nailing it right off the bat. That just don't happen. It's like any other craft. You have to learn your craft before you're good at it. He said after he bombed, he didn't work for 4 years. So there was another one. He bombed one time and figured, oh, this is comedy. I can't do it. Rather than realizing how good he was if he had get over, that first bump. But it took him 4 years to come around. Then he got a job as a taxi driver, which the flexible hours, which if you're working 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, it's tough. You can do it on the weekends, but if you want to be a good comic, you got to work out during the week. You got to work out your act, and you got to have nights available and be available. Like on a whim. Sometimes you get a call. You got to do a job. Hey, we got a show for you. Someone canceled out. Can you be here tonight? If you got a job, you got I got to check with my job. You got to be available in comedy. So being a taxi driver, you can pretty much make your own hours. So that allowed him to pursue his love of comedy once again. He actually he got pretty good at it. Eventually securing steady work at Stand Up New York and Comic Strip Live. And he secured a gig for doing restaurants across New Jersey, which I mean, there's a big circuit in restaurant money. I mean, that's what somebody said to me. I've got more gigs in comedy from my friends from comedy than I have from bookers. I mean, it's those restaurant gigs are good paying. They're not a comedy club, but I'll tell you, they're just as big a crowds and they'll keep you going. And that's called a road comic where you play gigs like that as opposed to a club comic where you play the clubs and a road comic. Sometimes you got to get the crowd into it. Where a club comic, people have paid to get in, and they're paid to see what you do. Or a lot of restaurants, it's like, hey, we'll give you a free meal and a comedy show, and it's like, well, I'll take the free meal, and if I like the comedy show, great. But they're not totally invested in the comedy show. You got to kind of win them over. So let's see. he created an improv show, which sold out Caroline's, which if you know Caroline's, that was one at the time. It's gone now. Rest in peace, Caroline's. But I was one of the bigger comedy clubs in New York, and he sold it out numerous times with this improv show. So it was I guess that's working on, Mad TV was an improv show. It's working on his improv skills, was probably why he got hired. But its success led to a contract with an agency. Okay, now if you're getting a contract to do comedy, whoa, this is the next level right there. That was where he met his manager for the next 10 years. It was at that agency. And now that he's with them, I mean, they're getting them extra roles in commercials, woohoo, that's your next step right there to getting noticed, to getting on TV on an actual show. Commercials are big time. I got a commercial out for G Vegas buffalo sauce. Go check it out on YouTube. It's a pretty good commercial. I'm not bragging, but I'm telling you, man, it's pretty good. All right. I mean, those were the ups. Then, of course, as we know, Artie had his downs. He was drinking during this time, and he developed a cocaine habit. Mad TV came along. Like I said, it was an improv show. They hired him because of his improv skills, and selling out Caroline. Somebody wants to see it. This is the guy to hire. But he said Mad TV paid him $7,000 an episode, which that only fueled his problem. He got $7,000 an episode to blow on drugs. I mean, if you're a drug addict, usually you can't work because you're doing drugs, and there's, hey, I got no money for the drugs, so I can't do them. But you got $7,000 an episode rolling in, you can do the drugs. Let's see. Tried to commit suicide when he ran out of cocaine, because when you're addicted to this stuff and you ain't got any, you start jonesing for your next fix, and you can go through the sweats, the shakes, all that stuff. So he tried to overdose on whiskey and pills, and some of his Mad TV co-stars found him and got him down to the hospital, got him into rehab, and once he got out of rehab, he wrote a 45-minute set, which he started performing stand up again, and performed in the New York comedy clubs again. Which, I mean, once you lose your job on TV, you can always go back to stand up, because even if you're an addict, I mean, as long as you're sober that night, they don't care what you do in your personal time. Where if you're on a movie, you got a reoccurring role, then not that you don't have to be reliable in comedy, but I mean, it's a much easier gig than TV. You got to be at the top of your game, and you got to be sober. Where comedy clubs, there's a lot of drugs going around. That's common on the circuit. Mad TV did stick by him, though. He returned to finish the first season. During the second season, 2 months in, he was using again, and he was arrested while in jail. He lost his role. I guess he was going to be in the movie Jerry Maguire with Tom Cruise, and you're in jail, you can't do a movie. So, I mean, there's a major opportunity. That movie was big, man. I'll tell you, big movie. And you lose an opportunity like that to drugs, I mean, you got to kick yourself for that. Those opportunities don't come along every day. After jail, he returned to Jersey, and he went to a psychiatric hospital, which, again, he used comedy to deal with all this. And if you go on YouTube, he's got some stories about being in that psychiatric hospital, left me in tears. I was crying so hard, just him trying to make sense of, I forget what he said. He's like, I would much rather be in jail than be in rehab. He's like, in jail, people make sense, and in rehab, they don't. In jail, what? I needed some money, so I stole a car. I was like, I understand. I needed some money, so you stole a car. In jail, and in rehab, they'd be like, I needed some money, so I jerked off at the mall. What are you talking about? So he did. He found some hysterical bits, and I mean, there were other bits just being in rehab, and some of the people that came in and the stories they told, which I did. I went to one AA meeting with my friend to support him, and some of the stories I was hearing was blowing up my mind, and I could see making routines out of them because I was in such shock over him. So I could see the stuff that he could. There's a lot of content in there, I guess, if you're willing to talk about it. During the third season, he was not allowed to be on there, but he did do some guest appearances on Mad TV. So I guess it was. I mean, I'm not sure of this, but I'm guessing it was. If you're messed up, you're not doing an episode, and if you're sober, we'll let you guest appear or whatever. So he did a few guest appearances, but that's cool of Mad TV to stick by him because most people would have just say, "Get out of here, you're ruining our show," which would have threw him into further depressing. I mean, you need something to go back to. As we said, Norm Macdonald cast him for his movie Dirty Work. Um, I guess Norm had watched him on Mad TV and said that he reminded him of John Belushi, which John had a bad drug addict, problem too. So I guess in more ways than one, he was like John Belushi. Not only his improv, but as we know, he replaced Jackie Martling on the Howard Stern show, and I got a podcast about Jackie Martling. I did with my buddy Jeff Sylvia, and a great podcast, Final Clown podcast. If you want to check that one out too, which kind of leads into this broadcast. I guess Howard thought, a lot of people tried out for that Howard Stern show, and I guess Howard thought he had that just everyman, personality, just an everyday guy. He wasn't so much of a television personality or radio personality. He was just an everyday blue collar worker that he thought everybody could, relate to, which is mostly, Howard's audience. So I mean, that was what won him out. He said the contract was a blessing. I mean, when you're down on your luck like that, and you burned all your bridges, and to have something like that come along and somebody give you a second chance in life, that's certainly what you need. Um, he said the show led to bigger venues for his comedy because he's got more of a following now. He's on the number one show on radio. Bigger opportunities, are coming along because he's a much more known, product now. Um, I guess and I didn't know this one, but I found this one. When Stern moved to satellite, as we all know, he went to XM satellite radio, Sirius or whatever the hell it is. And I guess when Stern went to satellite, they offered Artie $20 million for a 4-year contract to replace Howard Stern and do his own radio show with Gary Dell'Abate, which was Howard Stern's producer, him to produce the show. And I guess both Artie and Gary both turned it down, which I can see Gary. I mean, Gary stuck by Howard. They were a team. Howard's done a lot for him. You don't burn the guy, which he did for Artie too. I guess Artie tried to help him, so much. But I mean, $20 million for 4 years. I mean, here's a guy making 7,000 an episode. I mean, you hear $20 million, that takes some serious balls to turn that down. And I don't know if he did it as loyalty to Howard or, that's a lot of pressure too. Well, I'm hearing things. All right. But yeah, I don't know. He didn't burn Howard, or maybe it was, he wasn't ready for that kind of a commitment, at that stage. I don't know, but I know if somebody told me $20 million, I'd say, where do I sign? That's what I'd say. Let's see. Well, what happened with Joan Rivers. Johnny Carson gave her, a break on the Tonight Show, and she became big. Then all of a sudden, Fox offered her own Tonight Show, on their channel, competing with Johnny, and she took it, and Johnny never talked to her again. It's like, you kind of burned me. I make you into a big star. Now you're competing against me. So maybe, he felt like that. I don't want to be known as the guy who burned Howard. I don't know. Let's see. 2004 released It's the Whiskey Talking DVD, and that was a real blue collar, great comedy special that he did. 2008 he relapsed again, this time on heroin, which heroin's, as if booze and cocaine wasn't bad. Heroin's an extremely addictive, drug to be on. He released the book Too Fat to Fish, as we talked about. 2009, he returned to rehab again because he relapsed. Also during 2009, once he sobered up, he released another DVD, Jack and Coke, another great stand-up special. But all this pain in his life, and you say, how do you make it through? How do you go through this much pain? And that's comedy. You laugh about it. That's it. Releasing these specials. I mean, I got movies. That's how I deal with the pain I'm going through with my son. I mean, I got one out. The World Needs a New Superhero. It's on Fox TV streaming service Tubi, free with commercials. Go check it out. And I'm filming the sequel this summer. And a lot of people ask me, how do you stay sane, man? Your son hasn't talked to you in 10 years. Well, you're not alone, and then you learn to you laugh about it to cover up the pain, I guess. But certainly making these movies, that's what keeps me sane. I mean, getting my message across through them. So hopefully you'll go check that out for me and know that my message isn't in vain. And that's hey, I support Artie, man. I hope he keeps it together. Let's see. I guess he showed up one day at work for the Howard Stern show under the influence, and he was told to go home. And I think he said there was like 1 year he was on the Howard Stern show where he was just messed up every time he went in there. They knew it, they put up with it, and you don't even remember half of being on the air half the time. He was so messed up, and Howard tried to help him so much, but finally, 2010, he made another attempt at suicide, and I remember I think that time it was, I forget what, he stabbed himself like 9 times in the chest, and he did all kinds of drugs or whatever. And little did he know, while he was inside his house doing this, his mother, sister, and friends, they were outside the door. They were about to come in and try to do a intervention, and that was the only thing that saved them. Was when they went in, they found him. He had just did it. And they got to the hospital and they saved them. So thank God they were there at that time. And Colin Quinn was one of his friends. They were going to try to do the intervention with him. Yeah. Let's see. He tweeted a bunch of it's I don't know. It depends on how you look at it, I guess. I mean, you're right. You're tweeting something. It's your account. It's your thoughts. You can say whatever you want. But he's a public figure with so many followers. He was tweeting about sexual fantasies with ESPN. One of the ESPN workers, Can Champion, which was an attractive woman, but she was a black lady, and I guess he was tweeting about, it was back during, he was fantasizing in his head it was during slavery times when they got together or whatever, and it really turned into a big, big thing where I don't know if she personally came out, but ESPN was so pissed they gave him a lifetime ban. He can never be on ESPN, which I don't think he was on anyway, but he never will be at that point. And Comedy Central, they ended up canceling his next gig on Comedy Central, which because it was just such a big controversial thing at the time. Who's this guy to attack this poor woman? What does she do? He was just joking around, but some people can't take a joke, and I guess like I said, you can tell you that's a subject you shouldn't joke about something like that. Where again, it's his private account; he can joke about what he wants, but when you're in the public eye, free speech will only take you so far. Then you got to answer for what you do, no matter what you do in life. I mean, whether it's legal or not, people are going to question you, and you got to answer to the people. Nobody's bigger than that. He was hired to do the Artie Quitter podcast after that, and wrote a third book. Was given a reoccurring role in the HBO series Crashing. 2017, again, he was arrested in his cars for having drugs on him and drug paraphernalia. Let's see. After another stint in rehab, again, he started performing stand-up comedy on a regular basis. And let's see, started the Artie Lange's Halfway House podcast when he came out. And I don't know if he's still doing that to this day or not, but yeah, it was his last special he put out. I mean, I think he was at the top of his game. He had some others where he was blue collar and they were really good specials, but the last special he put out, he had some stories about, like I said, going to rehab. And one of the stories, one of the guys walked in out of nowhere and tell us why you're here. And the story had me in tears. And he was talking about one of the workers where, he was down south in rehab, and up here, the New York, the New England area, we're really sarcastic up here. That's our humor, is we find being sarcastic humor. But down south, they're not used to that. They're not used to sarcasm, and he was just throwing this guy into shock everything he'd say. But Artie, man, hey, listen, I know you're a great comic. A lot of people love you, and I know you're going through a lot of pain, and you joke about it in comedy because that's how you deal with it. Like I said, that's how I deal with my son not talking to me, but the pain's still there, and I know the pain's still there for you. And brother, I hope you get through it. I hope that you deal with your addiction. I'd encourage anybody out there. There's a suicide prevention hotline. If you're feeling down, call that if you need someone to talk to. Because I mean, a lot of times, if you're a drug addict, you've screwed your family and friends over 10,000 times to get to your drugs, and finally they're going to shut you off. It's like, this isn't going to keep happening. I'm not going to support your drug addict, and finally nobody will talk to you when you need someone to talk to. So just know that's always out there. Okay, call 1-800-suicide prevention, and there's always somebody to talk to. And if you want to tell your story to them, I'd encourage you to go get the help, because life's too short And I'll tell you, I got an eating problem, which, food is a drug like anything. And I've been getting myself in shape and I'm feeling really good. Hopefully I can stick with it. Hopefully you can stick with yours too. This is Final Compact Cast. We review comedians here. Tell your friends, tell your neighbor their favorite comedian. We got a review of them, and there's always some facts you did not know about it. You think you know your favorite comedian until you hear the podcast. Oh, I didn't know that about him. So it's cool. I'm having fun. Hope you're having fun. Till next time, tell someone a joke and make them laugh. Good night.